Welcome back. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on Newsx. Our big focus this hour, United States Vice President J.D. Vance has announced that the U.S. is a Christian nation. Vance was speaking about this when he made it clear that he wished his wife would convert to Christianity. Vance's comments on Usha and her being a Hindu have led to a lot of racist bigots calling her slurs and conservatives targeting her as well. Such has been the targeting that even Vivek Ramaswamy spoke on it and said such people hold no future even in the future of U.S. conservatives. Usha, on the other hand, previously made it clear that she's a proud Hindu. So have J.D. Vance's statements, such as the one made today on U.S. being a Christian nation, made Usha an easy target. Does the Second Lady of the United States deserve such targeting from MAGA supporters just because she is a Hindu? Well, let's in fact quickly listen in to what J.D. Vance has said on this issue.
By the same thing that I was moved in by church, yeah, I honestly do wish that, because I believe in the Christian gospel, and I hope eventually my wife comes to see it the same way.
The only thing that has truly served as an anchor of the United States of America is that we have been, and by the grace of God, we always will be a Christian nation.
Let's sit back now, listen into how a racist bigot had targeted Usha Vance and how Vivek Ramaswamy responded.
And now they're all in favor of a fat race mixer who's married to a Jeet who named his son Vivek, who was mentored by a Jewish neocon and a gay fed, Peter Thiel, and the guy's in bed with Israel. And that's your guy? And I'm the controlled opposition, really?
If you call Usha Vance, the Second Lady of the United States of America, a Jeet, you have no place in the future of the conservative movement.
Ambassador Bhashwati Mukherjee, former diplomat, joins us live. Nikhil Chandwani, author and influencer, is also live with us. Surinder Singh Lali, international affairs expert, joins us live. Madhav Nalapath, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is also joining the broadcast. Professor Nalapath, how do you react to these fresh statements being made by J.D. Vance and how they should be perceived in this entire controversy involving racist comments on Vance's wife, Usha? J.D. Vance insisting that the U.S. is and always will be a Christian nation.
Look, the fact of the matter is, Vice President Vance is interesting. An evangelist organization, Turning Point, founded by a young evangelist, Charlie Kirk, and therefore, and now, of course, after Charlie Kirk's assassination, the organization is now headed by his widow, Erica Kirk. Now, J.D. Vance, a politician, he knows where the votes are, so he will say what is politically good for him to say. And I don't think Usha Vance, frankly, bothers in the least about this kind of thing, nor does J.D. Vance. The simple reason that if you read Hillbilly Elegay, his autobiography, you will find their love story, and it is deep and definitely going to last a long time. So I just want to point out, this is politics, unfortunately, and in the US, as in so many other places, politics has stooped to a level of the gutter, and that is why some people trolled J.D. Vance for having married a non-Christian, a Hindu. But I'm happy to say that the successor of Charlie Kirk's movement, his own widow, Erica Kirk, she ignored these trolls. She ignored these abuses from some of the followers of who were Turning Point, who were there at the meeting, and she endorsed J.D. Vance as the next president of the United States. That's not a small thing. The fact of the matter is that if you look at opinion polls among voters, J.D. Vance is around 22% already. If he can get that another 20 to 30%, and he has a long time to do it, the next election is about 3.5 or odd years away, then he's going to be the next president. And Usha will continue to be his wife. Only now she'll be the first lady. So yes, I think it's unfortunate that J.D. Vance had to be so mindful of the politics of a section of the Republican Party. And let's not forget, this is the same party that was the party of Abraham Lincoln. That is the party that brought forward and got past the Emancipation Bill. And frankly, It is unfortunate that J.D. Vance made these comments, but I do not believe J.D. Vance a racist. Just like, for example, I don't believe Trump follows any Christian values at all. Yet he claimed to be a fervent Christian, and the evangelist vote went to him, both in his first election term and now in the second. But the reality of the situation is that J.D. Vance is not a racist, but he's forced to make these kind of sounds. Fortunately, he has mentioned about Usha
So he is
Vance's
appealing to his vote bank, is what you're clearly saying. Ambassador Mukherjee, is that your assessment as well? What do you make of these fresh remarks by J.D. Vance amidst this debate? We also saw how Vivek Ramaswamy was forced to react to bigots who targeted him and also targeted the United States Second Lady. What is causing these kind of statements in America that we're seeing?
J.D. Vance made these comments, which I, as a woman, find extremely objectionable, because his wife is a Hindu and a practicing Hindu. And when he was campaigning as vice president, he even told us that he greatly respected Hindus and that he learned how to cook vegetarian Hindu food for his in-laws who are vegetarian. I remember hearing that. That shows that the man is a hypocrite and a liar. Secondly, he also announced at that same speech, which excerpts of which must be available to you, Uday, that he is very proud of the fact that his children are being brought up in the correct Christian faith. In other words, he has insisted that his children be baptized as Christians. Thirdly, at that very same rally where he went to console the widow without his wife, she was seen, Erica was seen stroking his hair, stroking his face, stroking his cheeks, giving rise to huge speculation that she endorsed him because when he would become president, the second lady would be gone and there would be a new first lady who would be the widow of Charlie Kirk, because she was the one who would get him elected. So there are many, many nuances to this story, Uday. It's not as simple as the way Professor Nalapat, God's good man, has put it. I, as a woman who have followed this story very closely, am of the view that J.D. Vance has proven to be an unprincipled person. He said one story when he was on the campaign trail to become vice president after having said the most vile things against the present President Trump. He then came here to India where he was lionized by all of us, went around with his children, had a tika on his head, etc., etc., told us about how he cooks vegetarian food for his vegetarian Hindu in-laws. And then now he sees that Trump is not doing well, he can become president. And hey, does he really want a Hindu wife to pull him down? No, no, no. He'll get custody of the 3 kids. They're all Christians in any case. And he can get himself a second wife. Why not? When Trump has married 3 times, what stops J.D. Vance from marrying a second time? So I must say, I am extremely upset by these comments. I do believe that United States was not developed on such a principle. I believe that the present Republican Party of Trump is very different from the party of Abraham Lincoln, which brought about the emancipation of slaves. There are moderate Republicans who are extremely alarmed at the direction in which the present Republican Party is going, because it demonstrates that the United States has changed. It is no longer the universal dream that everyone thought of. The American dream is over and it has been replaced by xenophobia and racism. So I'm sorry that for once I have to disagree with Professor Nalapat and to say that I believe that this J.D. Vance, when he becomes president, will not be good for India, and you could have a different first lady in the
Nikhil
White House.
Chandwani, is this the politics of America of today that is leading to these kind of statements? Vivek Ramaswamy has come out and said that these statements should hold no place in the US and such individuals should not be part of the conservative movement, but that is not stopping such comments. J.D. Vance, of course, has reiterated what he said earlier on US being a Christian nation and his hope of Usha Vance perhaps converting to Christianity from Hinduism once again, indicating that at least through these statements. Is this spurring on the MAGA base to have these kind of views, or do you feel otherwise?
Let me begin by trying to reason with J.D. Vance, at least on his premise. If the United States is indeed a Christian nation, then let me ask him a very simple, unavoidable question. Why is America supplying defense equipment to Pakistan? Pakistan is a country where Christians are being smoked alive over fake blasphemy charges, where Christian homes are burned, where Christian girls as young as 9 and 10-year-old are forcefully converted, married off, erased from their families forever, and sold to the highest bidder. If fate defines your foreign policy, then why does it conveniently stop at arms contract and geopolitical convenience? Why is the entire Christian conservative ecosystem in America silent on Pakistan? Is Christian solidarity only invoked when it helps domestic politics but abandoned when Christians are being burnt alive abroad? And this is where I want to rightfully bring in Vivek Ramaswamy. I agree with Ambassador Mukherjee, ma'am. Vivek Ramaswamy, he openly says the real enemies of civilization are those who believe in forced conversion, religious supremacy, and mob justice. And he's absolutely right. Your enemy is not India, your enemies are not Hindus, your enemies are not pluralism. Your real enemy is that radical ideology that weaponizes religion to erase others, whether the victim is Christian, Hindu, or Jew. And J.D. Vance, he also added in his speech that H-1 visas should be restricted to protect American workers. Fine, this is a legitimate argument, but then I want to ask another question to him. Why is the same conservative ecosystem that fears Indian engineers, why are they completely silent over unchecked woke ideological migration? You're worried about a Hindu software engineer taking a job, but J.D. Vance is not worried about importing woke ideologies and funding those idiots in Pakistan that do not believe in coexistence at all. I'm an Indian. We all are Indians over here, and we come from the world's oldest surviving civilization. We have seen forced conversion for thousands of years. We have seen what happens when faith becomes a tool of domination. So when I speak, I'm not theorizing anything. I'm telling you what happens after slogans fade, after J.D. Vance's speeches fade, and mobs arrive. That's what we saw in Bangladesh, and that could happen in the United States if such speeches go on.
Okay, let me get in Surinder Singh Lali in at this point as well. Surinder Singh Lali is also with us live. Surinder Lali, what do you make of these fresh statements by J.D. Vance? What explains his reiteration of what he said earlier of his faith and the country's national faith, as he's calling it? Also, what is spurring on those within the US to make these kind of comments on Usha Vance? Is this a fringe anymore, or is this becoming a bit more worryingly mainstream?
Thank you, Uday. Professor Ambassador Mukherjee said that J.D. Vance is not a principled man. I mean, the last thing you have to expect from a politician is principle, morality, and scruples. Uday, I see it very simply. Donald Trump is not doing fine, be it his health or the Epstein files. And in the midterm, in all probability, he's going to go lame duck. So the Republican Party is now, Donald Trump is keeping the seat warm for J.D. Vance. If you see the way he has changed, gone 180 in terms of his love for Hinduism, and now the way he's been kind of cozying up with Erica Kirk, of course, the body language. And on top of that, Erica yesterday at the Phoenix Turning Point event, pitched him for, the next presidential candidate. So J.D. Vance has realized that if he has to become the president in America, and who wouldn't? And then it sounds very absurd, very ruthless, but he wouldn't mind getting rid of his wife because there have been other indications too. I mean, Usha was recently seen without the wedding ring. They were seen openly, disagreeing with each other in a restaurant. And the way now suddenly J.D. Vance is talking all about a Christian nation because they need the Rust Belt state and the redneck votes, and which is a huge chunk. So Uday, there is one don't need to be a rocket scientist to see that Christian nation is going to be the next agenda on which the Trumpetized Republican Party, I mean, it has nothing to do with the other, individuals who formed the Republican Party or the Abraham Lincoln. It is purely a megalomaniac mercantilist trying to run the affairs, and unfortunately, the tariffs are hitting back. The inflation is kicking in, his health is kicking in, and I think sweeping the Epstein files is going to be almost impossible. And not only that, Uday, if you see, Tulsi Gabbard said yesterday at the same event, she said that Islamic ideology is spreading. Elon Musk has been talking, giving, lectures to England. And Donald Trump says that we should have immigrants from Scandinavia and other countries. I mean, do you have that many STEM graduates? Not at all. So there is method to the madness where J.D. Vance is now being groomed as, the next president possibly in waiting, although Marco Rubio is also going to stick his head into it. But J.D. Vance seems to be working in an absolute strategized manner where you never know if Donald Trump is going to complete the second term because of his MR reports, his patches on the hand, and the way he's been discussing about his wife's undergarments at rallies. So that gentleman is probably a severe case of dementia, and the Republican Party is keeping the seat warm for J.D. Vance, even if he has to dump his wife, his kids, or, his principles and his morality. I mean, the President of the United States of America is huge for any American aspirational guy who actually comes from the Rust Belt states and had a very tough upbringing. So I'm sure he probably wants to do what he's dreamt
What
for
is
his
though?
entire
What is
life.
though, Professor Nalapat, leading to such kind of bigotry as we haven't seen before in the United States that we are seeing around us today? Is this becoming now worryingly mainstream? Earlier it was a fringe, but now the kind of comments and from those who they are coming from, again and again and again, leading, of course, Vivek Ramaswamy to call out that individual, as we played out in that soundbite at the start of the show. It's worryingly becoming a bit too common.
Look, I'd like to point out that many months ago, I wrote, and I said on television, Donald Trump is on a downward slope. You can check my writings, for example, Sunday Guardian, and confirm that. The reality of the situation is that in the Catholic faith, you cannot divorce. There is no question of divorce. If you divorce, you're no longer regarded as a Catholic. So there's no question of J.D. Vance divorcing Usha Vance. As I said, it's very unfortunate that J.D. Vance was forced to talk this kind of political rubbish, if I may say so. And I applaud Vivek Ramaswamy for standing up, despite the MAGA base having succeeded in getting him removed as the vice chairman of DOGE, Department of Governmental Efficiency, headed by Elon Musk. Musk made a decision that when he saw that the MAGA was coming after Vivek Ramaswamy, because Ramaswamy was defending, and correctly so from the US point of view, from the US interest point of view, defending the H-1B visa, then immediately the MAGA-based attacked him, but Ramaswamy has stood firm. He has not changed his stand, and I wish J.D. Vance also stood firm. He had not changed his stand, but I would like to point out that from my knowledge of what the people around J.D. Vance, they are clear that he's not a bigot and that Usha is not going to convert in any way. So, but unfortunately making some very, very, if I may say so, hateful remarks. And I think that's a very steep slope. And I'm worried that J.D. Vance also will go the Donald J. Trump way and down an incline for a simple reason. America is now a multicultural country, like it or not, a multi-faith country, like it or not, and nobody can get elected just on a single base of conservative white voters. Many white voters are moderate. They are not bigots at all. And if you appeal to a very narrow base, well, I fear that J.D. Vance, who's today the front runner, I mean, Trump and Rubio, their ticket was floated by some sources within the White House. They got 2%. J.D. Vance got 22%. But the fact is that 22% will include people of different faiths, people of different ethnicities. And I think if J.D. Vance wants to win a general election, he'll have to revert back to being the real J.D. Vance. I think Vice President Vance needs to go back to being J.D. Vance. And I again repeat that in the Catholic faith, there is no question of divorce and remarriage. Once you divorce, you're no longer considered a good Catholic. Uday.
Okay. Let me leave the last word to you, Ambassador Mukherjee, on where things are going, what do you expect, in the days ahead, in the conservative, party, and of course amongst the conservative voter base in the US?
I expect J.D. Vance to possibly win the election. As has been correctly pointed out by Professor Nalapat, he will have to go back to being the old J.D. Vance, not the Vice President J.D. Vance. I'd like to add that in the Roman Catholic Church, divorce is now allowed, and you can continue to be a Catholic after getting a divorce. That particular business of not being allowed to divorce was at the time when John F. Kennedy, the first Catholic to become president, that law was there. That has been changed. But let's not get into a discussion. I sincerely hope that there will not be a divorce, but we can't rule it out, because I would agree with my co-panelists who say that if you look at the long road that J.D. Vance himself said, that his parents were drug addicts, that his grandmother took a shotgun and took it to his head and said, if I ever see you with drugs, I'm going to shoot you dead. That's the kind of upbringing he had. From that upbringing to go to the White House, many decent people also could be tempted to go down the wrong path, which would include bigoted, racist language, dumping the wife whom you love, etc., etc. After all, they said the Shah of Iran divorced his wife whom he loved because he wanted to have a son. These things happen. People take wrong decisions. But what I am concerned about is that if bigotry and racism becomes part of the established policy of the grand old party, as it's called, the Republican Party, it's not good for United States. It's not good for international peace and security. It's not good for India, because India has great ties with the United States. So let us hope, as Professor Nalapat says, that J.D. Vance reverts to the old J.D. Vance, whose speeches I used to follow with admiration, whose visit to India I followed enthusiastically. And let's hope that it doesn't go down that bigoted way because of the hallucinatory image of him being inside that White House when he had a most miserable upbringing in a poverty-stricken state, and he actually symbolizes what the Depression did to America. So let's hope for the best.
Yes.
And that's what I have to say with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
My thanks to all of our guests for joining us. On that note, slipping into a very short break.